Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Godwin. Um, so we were talking about sectoral composition, um, in Nigeria's GDP, sectoral contribution to Nigeria's GDP in last class, and we looked at the mainstay of Nigeria's economy and why it is the mainstay, and then we also talked about how to analyze a given data set. So, what are you supposed to talk about in addition to whatever it is you have in mind? Okay. And what else did we talk about? The criteria for mainstay of an economy, and we were able to. I was able to explain to you that the most important criteria for the mainstay of a country's economy is what sector of the country generates the most revenue, right? So, like, what sector of the country is most valuable in terms of its outputs, yeah, stuff like that. And from there, we're able to realize that it wasn't agriculture, because agriculture is no longer, you know, taking a big chunk of the country's foreign exchange. So now it is what do you call it, the oil subsector. You understand? So we look at that. So who knows? Over time, we are hoping, the country is hoping that over time, um, the manufacturing subsector, or better still, the industrial sector, would become the mainstay of the country's economy. And I think for developed countries, so they all begin with agriculture, just like Nigeria, right? But over time, they move from agriculture into manufacturing, all right, and later from manufacturing, they eventually end up in services. You understand? So, like, the economy becomes so developed when service is now occupying a big chunk of the GDP. But if you look at Nigeria's case, it's as if we are jumping from agriculture to manufacturing. So we are having something like what do you call this thing? Um, a premature deindustrialization, something like that. A premature deindustrialization, because our industrial sector is supposed to work right. It's supposed to be better than it is before we settle into services. But that's not about that particular class. So since we've spoken about what happens in domestic economy, so what and all of those things. So let's look at Nigeria's exports, Nigeria's trade balance. All right. So what is it that Nigeria really produces? Okay, all these data that I've written up here. So I got them from, it's very important to state your data source, BACI and OEC economic complexity indicators. So that's how I got this data set from. So you can also get kind of the same data set from other sources. So there are variations. They might vary because I think I don't know why they vary exactly, but it might be due to measurement techniques. You understand? So, but their variation, they should still tell the same story. So that's like the most important thing. But their variations might be, their values, might be slightly different. You understand? Anyway, so let us look at Nigeria's trade profile in 2020, for example. So in 2020, according to this data set, so I want you to see the top things that Nigeria is exporting, and the top five things Nigeria is exporting, and then top five things Nigeria is importing. So Nigeria's export profile, the first one is crude oil. So in 2020, we sold $30 billion worth of crude oil in the international market, followed by petroleum gas. Remember that crude oil is primary sector, right? Okay. Followed by petroleum gas, which is $5.8 billion. Then followed by scrap vessels. Okay. Scrap vessels is actually ships that are no longer um, um, how do you call it now? Ships that are broken down and sold in parts. Okay, so scrap vessels is like you selling the parts of ships that have outlived their purposes. Okay, so Nigeria, like breaking old ships down and stuff like that, and selling them on the international market. So those things are used to, they are used as raw materials. Shipbuilding companies use scrap vessels as raw materials to build, newer ships, and stuff like that, or new ships. Let me put it that way. Okay, so they have benefits, you understand, because it helps in um, preserving the climate, and in terms of greenhouse emissions, lower and stuff like that. So after that, then we go to their special purpose ships. Nigeria sold 775 million dollars worth of special purpose ships, and then we have refined petroleum, which is $613 million. Like I said, according to this data source. Now, who are our top five buyers? Who were our top five buyers in 2020? So, like trading partners. Okay, so people that imported these things. Who were the top people that imported these things? So we have India. So India imported stocks worth of 6.27 billion from Nigeria in 2020, followed by Spain 4.8 billion, China 2.54 billion, Netherlands 2.24 billion, and South Africa 2.17 billion. Okay, so in case you're asked, who are Nigeria's trade partners? Okay, it depends on the year you're talking about, though, but for now, or in 2020, these were our top five buyers. Now, all of these things also depend on the availability of data. So, for the things you have here, the data that we could get was for 2020. We couldn't get for 2021. As I time I was looking for these things, 2021 and 2022, they were not available for Nigeria. For other countries, they were available for. I think USA has 2020 data sets. You understand? But for Nigeria, 2020 was the highest I could get. I think even South Africa has 2021 data sets. But it is what it is. Data collation and stuff like that, data availability collation and stuff. Data can be a very big problem when you begin your final year project. It used to be a very very big problem, to a lot of students. You having incomplete data, and stuff like. You just have to like do some things, to just make sure that you are able to go on with your project. Now, what was Nigeria's import profile like? So we are looking at this as if our latest. You understand? That's the eyes that we are using to look at this thing as if it was our latest. So what was Nigeria's import profile in 2020? So Nigeria imported refined petroleum. If you look at it, Nigeria sold refined petroleum $630 million on the world market, but then it came back to import 7.75 billion worth of refined petroleum. So you can imagine. So what's going on? You are importing what you're selling. So it is what it is. So that means there is a huge gap in the economy. So the refined petroleum that is being made available in Nigeria is not even enough for domestic consumption. But then they are being sold. So and then you now have 7.75 billion of it being imported to meet up local demand. You understand? So it's sad. And Nigeria is blessed with crude oil. So why is Nigeria importing refined petroleum again? It's a sad story, and it's still the same like till now. But we just hope that things are going to get better over time. Then cars, obviously, cars 3.03 billion. Then the import of wheat. This is also not so cool. Why should we be importing wheat? But we import wheat anyway, 2.15 billion. Then packaged medicaments, 1.38 billion. Then telephones, we spent $771 million. We spent $771 million on telephones in 2020. Like I said, this course is for you to neighbor Nigeria. Okay, so just keep enjoying yourself, and you can just keep watching the videos over and over for these things to stick, and stuff like that. Now, who were our top five sellers in 2020? Who were the people that sold stuffs to us, or who were the people that we imported stuff from in 2020? We imported from China $17.4 billion worth of whatever that we bought from China. Okay, and if you remember, we sold 2.54 billion worth of stuff to China in 2020, but we are importing 70.4 billion. And I think even if you break this down, a lot of China buys a lot of wood, yes, from Nigeria. So if we break this down, kind of sure to a certain extent that that's gonna be there. You understand? Now, Netherlands sold stores worth of 4.58 billion to us, and they only imported like earlier from it. Okay, from us. Then you have USA, 4.49 billion. You have India, you have Belgium. So if you're asked who were our trading partners in 2020, India, Spain, China, Netherlands, South Africa, USA, and Belgium. Yeah, USA and Belgium. Our biggest buyer in 2020 was India, and our biggest seller was China. Okay. Now, that's that. about our import and export profile. So before I leave that, let's come here. So in 2020, our total exports, well, remember that it was a COVID year. Our total export was $42.4 billion, and our total import was $52 billion. So our balance of trade was negative. The balance of trade is export minus import. So minus $9.6 billion, almost $10 billion. Alright, so let's leave that. And now this is also interesting. Now in 2020, Nigeria was the world's biggest importer of one artificial filament, $188 million. Embroidery, like you kind of wonder in this country, how on earth are we importing embroidery? Like, designs, those beautiful stuffs on clothes, on curtains, on bed sheets, and stuff like that. We have a lot of creative people in Nigeria, but like I said, manufacturing sector is not really working. Okay, so $143 million worth of embroidery was imported in a year. Eh, Potato flowers, like for God's sake, potato flowers. If you go to market, potato just gets like it's waste. Like it's a sad thing. So potato is wasted in Nigeria, but then we are still importing. So we can't even process our potato into potato flour that is going to sufficiently meet Nigeria's domestic demand. So we have to import. So we are importing. That's not even the worst thing. We are importing matches. But the world's biggest importer of matches in 2020, like matchstick, the one that's you used to cook match. We spent $16.3 million on importing matches in 2020. So like matches, Nigeria, giant of Africa. Then phosphite, $44,000. All right, so that's about our importers, like our latest import export profile data that I was able to lay my hands on for this particular class. All right, so next thing is we talk about cultural and economic complexity and then position. So now, what is economic complexity? That's what we should look at. So economic complexity looks at the exports of each country and considers two things. It considers diversity and ubiquity. Now, you may be asking, should I memorize all these things? I want you to know something. Number one, I'm just here busy enjoying myself. Right? So like teaching you a lot of things. You understand? So if you can get everything fine and you can just get what is required for you in your school's exams and whatever, it's okay too, but you know, just be knowledgeable. Like be knowledgeable in the right things. You get all right. So economic complexity, like I said, looks at the economy of a country, looks at the export of a country using two criteria. So it looks at in terms of diversity. So how diverse is your export? Okay. So this economic complexity is a concept that was, designed by MIT. Okay, by some researchers in MIT. Okay. So how diverse is your export? That is, how different is your export? How sophisticated are they from each other? Right. It looks at that. And it also looks at ubiquity. So ubiquity, UBIQUITY. Okay. So ubiquity is looking at what you're exporting. How many countries can export the same? You understand? So two things. First is um diversity. How diverse is your export from each other? So are you the kind of country that exports, let's say, pencil? Okay. Then the next thing you also export computers. You export ships. You export planes. If you look at those things, you export pencil and computers. Their sophistication is, in fact, it's not close. It's wide. Then you look at that to ships. Look at that to planes. So a country producing like selling pencil on the world market is also selling ships. So that's a kind of complex, and diverse, basket of exports over there, right? And then you now look at it ubiquity, like how many other countries can produce these things? I don't think there are so many countries that can produce planes and ships, you know. So if you have a country like that, for example, the country is going to score high on economic complexity. So the way it is now, the way it is in the world as at 2020, the way it was in 2020, Japan was the one that ranked first in terms of economic complexity and that the highest value. So the value of 2.19, how it is calculated, not like I can do the calculation for you, but like I said, MIT guys, they know how they do their thing. All right. Looking at your basket of exports and then using their index on um, ubiquity, and diversity. So doing their calculations, whatever, and arriving at a value. So high, the higher the value, the higher the value of your export's economic complexity, the higher um, the value of your exports, yeah, and then the more sophisticated is your basket of exports. The things you're exporting, the more sophisticated it is, and the more developed your economy is actually, because for your economy to be able to produce that wide range of things that have different levels of sophistication, so it means that your economy is doing well, especially your manufacturing industry is doing really well. So it's a measure of not just economic growth, a measure of economic development. You understand? So you may not know the difference between economic growth and economic development, and it's okay. So over time, we're also going to talk about that. All right, maybe this course, maybe another course, I don't know, but you'll be introduced to that over time. All right, so as of 2020, Japan scored the highest 2.19 position out of 127 countries that this stuff was you know obtained for. So you have number one was Japan was number one out of 127. I had to research on the um I think the most developed country in Africa, and I got Mauritius, and I was like, okay. I was even thinking maybe South Africa or Egypt, or maybe Rwanda that I just coming up. It says Mauritius, okay. And I went to look at this data. I changed the country from Nigeria to Mauritius, and I couldn't get anything on Mauritius. So I couldn't get this kind of data on Mauritius. So I guess it was one of the countries that they probably couldn't rate their exports and then calculate the economic complexity of it. So there are more than 127 countries in the world anyway. Maybe around 190, 184, 190 or thereabout. Alright, but we only have 127 countries. So USA, almighty USA, scored 1.56 in terms of economic complexity and is ninth in the world. Okay, then you have China, 0.96, 28th in the world. Indonesia, we are going to talk about Indonesia in our next class better. Indonesia and Malaysia, right? So there is when we start talking about agricultural sector, so you have minus 0.093 negative value, and they are 64th in the world. How about Nigeria? Almighty Nigeria, minus 1.65, and we are 125th out of the 127 countries. We are 125th, which means that what we are producing can also be produced by a lot of countries, and our basket of exports is not sophisticated. So that's what it means. So in terms of diversity, okay, they are not really diverse from each other. So they are more or less primary goods. So we can look at our top exports: food oil, primary goods; petroleum, primary goods; craft vessels. You are not even the one producing the vessels, so they are probably imported vessels that are no longer good. We bring them and sell their spare parts. So we can look at it. Then special purpose ships, then refined petroleum. So it's still little addition to, or okay, fine. We've been able to add a little bit to our crude oil, but look at 613 million, and we are selling crude oil of 30 billion. So is our refined petroleum not supposed to sell for more value than our crude oil? So, and then you have other things. If these are top exports, so what can you say about the other part of our export basket that is not top five? Okay, so there are countries that also have crude oil. Of course, I don't even think the crude oil that we sell is commands the highest value, in terms of price for crude oil. Okay, in the world market, but it is what it is. So that's Nigeria for you for now. At least that's our country. So hopefully we are going to be getting better as time goes on. So yeah, like I said, there's an assignment I'm going to write on the board soon, and after this class we'll be talking about the sectors in Nigeria, sectors and the subsectors. So next class we start with agricultural sector, and followed by manufacturing, and we continue like that. So wait and let me write the assignment. It says that you should click on the assignment link in the description box of this video. So there's going to be a link there that you would use to do the assignment. And using 2020 data, compare Nigeria and South Africa in terms of the following, as stating with reasons the country that is likely more developed. So A, You have to compare the two countries in terms of their total exports, imports, and balance of trade for 2020. B, in terms of total top five export and imports. You already have the top five export and imports for Nigeria anyway, so the one you are just looking for is that of South Africa. Then C, top five trading partners for import and export. You already have that for Nigeria, so look for the one for South Africa to know if our trading partners are similar. You understand? Or maybe the same. Now D, the first thing you're going to do, you are going to define what product complexity is. So you have to define it. You can look for how to define it. And having defined it, so use product complexity to compare both countries' top most complex exports. Now let me give you a hint. Okay, product complexity is also part of the data you're going to see, but the definition of product complexity may not be in the data. So you find out what the definition is and then use it to compare both countries' top most complex exports. So when you go to the document very well, you would there's a section of it that talks about this. You understand? So it's not a big deal. Like I said, this is how you're going to be having assignments in this particular course, and interesting assignments actually. All right, so thank you very much. We are going to meet in the next class where we shall discuss agricultural sector in Nigeria. So see you there. Bye.